Hello, and welcome to Mentor Dino. I'm your host, Katelyn Rossier. I am an architect and founder of Mentor Dino. I firmly believe that architecture, engineering, and construction professionals can achieve true success by embracing human skills as their guiding principle. So each week, I interview amazing professionals in and around the AEC industry as a way to share stories, inspiration, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, we'd love to have you join our community. So if you like this episode, please do me a favor and hit subscribe, like, or leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own career journey. So let's dive in. I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome back to the Mentor Dino podcast. I would like to welcome Liz Sydnor, architect and principal of Sydnor Design LLC in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you so much, Liz, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this experience.
And I know we talked ahead of time a little bit about kind of your career journey and pivoting to start your own business, but to update everybody else on kind of your journey so far, do you mind giving us a little bit background on your experience, education, and kind of what led you up to where you are today to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. So I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona. I attended Arizona State University for my undergraduate degree in architecture and went right into grad school at UT Austin and ended up staying in Austin, Texas for a total of 10 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. I wasn't sure if I was going to come back to Arizona or not. So I went to grad school. I ended up working for a firm that specializes in single-family residential projects. And I worked there for 7 years, which was a wonderful experience. And in that time, I also got my architecture license, my architect license. And after that, I ended up moving back to Phoenix with my husband. It's been a year since this month of April. And in October of last year, I started my own firm, Sydnor Design. So that's kind of the fast track version of it. So I'm excited to talk more about that too.
Yeah. So when you were moving back to Arizona, did you stay with your firm at the time that you were with over in Texas?
I did. So I loved the firm I was working for. Again, single family residential projects and the people that I was working with. And so my intent was to work remotely for them for as long as possible. And so I did a few trips back to Austin for important client meetings and, project milestones. And so I did that from April into September of last year.
Do you have any advice for anybody that wants to either move back to where their family is or move somewhere else but love the firm that they're with?
Yeah, that was definitely a challenge and not something I necessarily planned for. I guess my advice would be, even though I wasn't completely ready to move, and the reason we moved is my husband, who's also an architect, got a job offer here in our hometown. And so it was kind of serendipitous because, both of our families are here. We could be closer to both of our families. And so I think just really deciding what's right for you and, what works for you at that time and for your family. And I think, moving back, it was a hard decision because my options were either, work for another firm locally, work remotely, or, start my own practice. And I ultimately, thought, I have a really great thing going on here now. Let's maintain that. And that's what worked for me at that time. So
Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's great advice because you never know what's going to happen in life or what's going to pull you different directions because, you could be hired tomorrow, but 5 years is a long time. A lot of life happens, family changes happen, and other requirements. But I know
Yes.
sometimes that can be a struggle, especially if you really love the project types you're working on or the firm itself or the leadership, and leaving that to take a risk on somewhere that you may not like is
Hmm.
can be daunting.
Yeah, yeah, and it was. And I think, I quickly learned, as optimistic as I was, that, I thought, yeah, this could work for a long time. For me personally, working remotely by myself, um, and not having that close contact with my team and my coworkers, it was really hard, um, mentally, and just kind of took a toll after a while. And I thought, okay, I'm a social creature. I don't know if this is going to work out long term. And I didn't know that until I was experiencing it. Um, so yeah, like you said,
Yeah.
life has all kinds of challenges that come at times that you aren't expecting.
Yeah. And they just did the high end residential,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what enticed you into the high end residential world, or did you just stumble in it?
It was a little bit of both. My previous boss was actually a professor of mine, and we had a really good relationship, and I was really familiar with the work that he was doing and that the firm was doing, and it was kind of a dream place to be in that type of program for residential architecture, and so I think that specific firm attracted me to it because of the just quality of the work. Is really apparent, and just the rigor and dedication to high quality design was something that I was really interested in. And so, although I wasn't really set out for single family residential in the start of my career, I think I really wanted to focus on good design. Um, and that's what they excelled at.
Yeah, and it's great to talk through because a lot of graduates have no idea what project type they want to work on.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's how do you find a firm that aligns with what you want to do when you don't know what you want to do yet?
Yes.
So it's always good to have that other lens to it that doesn't matter what type. If you have a certain rigor or design style, you can always focus on those firms and talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, with architecture firms, every firm is so vastly different, leadership, management, and the project types that you're doing. So I think it's important to just try, different experiences and see, what really gets you excited about the work that you're doing.
Yeah. And then going with kind of leading into the struggles you had learning to be remote rather than in the office with everybody, what made you decide to open up your own business? And tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that business because I know a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think having that distance a little bit and working remotely and kind of spending a lot of time with myself, it was a very reflective moment for me. Um, and I realized I was in denial about it for probably too long, but I was experiencing that big word that we hear about, which is burnout. Um, and, my body was kind of screaming at me, like, Liz, like, you need to slow down. Um, you've, I think a lot of things contributed to that burnout. But I think the most common denominator was just me and my belief in that, doing more is what brings me value. And so I poured myself into school, into work, organizations outside of work. And I was just kind of working at a pace that wasn't sustainable. And, from feedback I've been getting, I don't think this is unique to architects and to creative fields. And so, my body was telling me like, Liz, I think it's time to try something else. What you're doing right now isn't quite working. Um, and so I thought, okay, if I'm working on architectural projects, there's a part of it that, making buildings is hard. Like just all around, it's a difficult process. Enjoyable for sure. And, I absolutely loved parts of it. And that's why I did it for a while. But I kind of thought, okay, the timeline of projects, it's hard because I'd work on a project for 2 to 3 years and you don't really get that satisfaction of like all of this hard work you pour into a project. And then, you have maybe a little celebratory moment and that's that satisfaction. And then it's on to the next, right? And what attracted me to other disciplines of design was just a different timeline. So like graphic design, you can get a project, really experiment very quickly with those design elements and just have a quicker turnaround. So it's a lot more gratifying, I find, in the projects I'm working on now, where the timeline is much shorter. I can really experiment more creatively with those projects versus an architectural project. And do I miss architectural projects? For sure. Like I really miss the complexity. And I hope to do architectural projects in the future again. But right now, I think, I wanted to try something different. So that's what kind of, that's why Sydnor Design was born. It was kind of out of that necessity of like, okay, I need to take care of myself. I need to do this in a way where I can work on creative endeavors that I've been thinking about, but haven't really had the time and the space to explore those things since I was working full time in architecture. So that kind of gave me the freedom and the independence to do something different.
Yeah, and that kind of this, I call it the snowball effect or the avalanche that we tend to find for any design field. Like you could stumble back into burnout with graphic design too, but
absolutely.
It's like, okay, you get really excited. It's like, you're playing in the snow and you're having a lot of fun. And then you're like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And then all of a sudden, like one extra hard week turns into 2 extra hard weeks, which turns into 3 and then months. And then for some professionals, it turns into years.
Yes.
Until they hit that wall. And sometimes it's a medical issue is the wall that like stops you, or just mentally exhausted. I know I hit medical issues on my end when I hit my burnout wall that I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And it's not till you talk to somebody outside of a design field that they're like, what are you doing? Well, like, back off, relax. Like, you're stretching yourself too thin. But I feel like design professionals, like, you're always trying to do more to have a bigger impact or do something different. Or we really care about our clients and what we're working on. And that care and passion can just lead to extra work.
Totally.
So you're definitely not the only one.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. That resonates so deeply. And I love this quote. It's like my motto for this year. It's doing more doesn't make you a better person. It makes you a tired person. And that's from Courtney Carver. She was the starter of the 333 project, which is a minimal fashion project. But I love her Instagram account. She's always talking about doing less can be better in all aspects of your life. And that's the thing I remind myself, when I get excited and, I'm a driven person. And I want to help people. I want to do all the things. But you have to kind of pace yourself and tell yourself doing more doesn't necessarily mean better.
Yeah, it's always the quality versus quantity. But then I guess it's like, if you think of time wise, it's quality of your time and effort on what you're putting in. I guess more than the amount of time you're putting into something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think um, starting out your career and like you said, the snowball effect, like until you kind of hit those points where it's too much or, something isn't working for you, like just to reevaluate and to think, okay, focused work works the hardest. And when you're spreading yourself too thin to too many things, it's not productive at the end of the day, even though that's what your goal is. is you're trying to be the most productive possible. So yeah.
Yeah. And I know you do more graphic design. So, what type of projects are you working on within the graphic design realm?
Yeah. So I focus on graphic design and branding, and right now the first projects I worked on, I did a branding refresh for a local architecture firm, and that was really cool because it was looking at a brand uh, that already existed and kind of stepping back and looking at what they wanted to keep, what they wanted to change, what their vision was moving forward, and if what they had was still working for them. So I really enjoyed that project and working with fellow architects and creatives, and learning about their process. And I thought that was really valuable for me too, to get insight into that. So a branding refresh. I also did a website design for a close friend of mine, and new branding established for her as well. She's a dancer and fitness instructor. And that was a lot of fun to work on. I also do social media management. So taking branding into the social media realm has been a lot of fun, and learning more about that. That's been a big interest of mine for a long time. So it's really nice to really spend that time learning about that part of the industry.
Yeah, and you get to do different things. I think like you talked
Yeah.
about the struggle in architecture is just you're on a project and it can be years before that
Hmm.
project's complete. And maybe you're working on multiple projects and they have different timelines, but they're all years rather
Right.
than like a website's probably going to take you a while to go through and hash out details and how it all works. But social media can be a really quick engagement testing out things. And so there's even different speeds within graphic design, but they're all still a lot quicker than architecture, which can be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, I think that's what's great is there's just an element of like just being experimental with things. And even starting my own social media account for my business. And I mean, because you run yours too,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you kind of put an idea out there, and, it's okay if not every post or, piece of content is a home run, but what's cool about it is you test that and figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
and see what people resonate with.
Yeah, you fail fast and hard, but you don't have to worry about like it being costly on the job site for making
Yeah.
a failure on it. It's like, okay, throw it out. I know it's kind of weird being, since I'm kind of in two boats, I have fun on the social media side, like you're having with the graphic design, which is a whole nother empowering tool of design itself and pulling together color schemes. Or I play with the little dinosaur guy on like how I can use him in
Yeah.
different ways. But
Uh-huh.
like the fun nature of like rapid iteration or testing out different things, and it's like throwing a dart and seeing what sticks. And then, but I also still have the architecture arm that I'm doing that's like the long lead. So it's like this weird, like emotional design dynamic that I've been doing
Yeah.
for like a year now that I kind of see both sides. And, you know, it's juggling to keep up, but I can definitely see the
Yeah.
appeal of graphic design and doing websites and everything, and how that the education that architecture gives you allows you so many more paths than just the architecture industry alone.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the wonderful thing about having an education in architecture is it really is so much more extensive than I think what people think about, like, or not think about, but their expectations are. You study history of architecture, you study theory, like the philosophy behind these things. You study how to build walls, like, and not get water in the wrong places. Like, I mean, the breadth of just like what you're studying and what you're learning, I think is a wonderful education, and you can take it, in many different directions. So I think that's what I've been really grateful for too.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, but when I was in school, it was very much like, this is the path, and you want to go be a licensed architect, so this is what you can do, and you can go build houses. And
Mm-hmm.
the different ways you can take your career path is like small, large firm, design or technical, or a type of architecture. And they only barely touched on, like, hey, you could be a real estate developer. But then that
Right.
was
Yeah.
really it. I'm like, that's it? Like, in school, I was too headstrong of, I want to be an architect and I want to do this. So, like, it didn't matter to me. But I know my other classmates that were like, I'm not sure if becoming an architect's right for me. Is this education even worth it to me? Should I quit after 3 years and not get my undergrad? Like, there were so many
Mm-hmm.
conversations that's like, no, just finish the degree because architecture is still so important of an education, and you don't have to
Yeah.
do the defined path that
Yeah,
they kind of script
totally.
for you.
Totally. And like, I was definitely on that path, like 110%. Like, I'm going to be an architect. I mean, I'm a licensed architect. I carried
Mm-hmm.
that path through. And, I had that belief through for a very long time, that that was the only way to go. But I don't really know what made me question that anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised. I'm like, wow, what made me make the leap? Maybe delusion. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
A happy delusion, but no, I think it's really cool that you definitely have the option to go into other careers, or
Yeah.
be a successful architect from that education.
Yeah. And I know a lot of professionals that I talk to that are debating on pivoting their career or currently in the middle of pivoting their career into something else have had a large struggle with it, just because it was so much, you want to be an architect and do this, and pivoting's like, oh my gosh, I'm giving up my life, or I feel like
Hmm.
I failed because I'm pivoting. Were there any particular struggles for you as you were trying to make that decision to pivot? Or was the burnout strong enough that you're like, I just can't?
Yeah. Yeah. No, there was definitely those thoughts, coming in strong for a while. Like, it took me months and like a lot of thinking to come to the conclusion. No, there were thoughts of like, yeah, exactly what you're saying of, oh, I kind of failed at this. Like, I failed at architecture because I'm not practicing architecture every day and doing those types of projects. Um, so I think that that was hard to get over, and I'm still kind of getting over that a little bit, of having a bit of an identity crisis. Even even on my website, it's like, oh, I wanted to portray I am an architect, but I do all these other things. And so I try to say, like, yes, I am an architect, but I also am an advocate, especially for women in design and architecture. I'm an author. I'm writing a book now. I am a storyteller. I enjoy telling my story to inspire others to tell their stories. And so it's like, you can be an architect, but you can also be all these other things too.
Yeah, you can definitely multitask and figure out what you're doing. Um, I didn't want to lead into it ahead of the question, but I know the professionals that I know that have pivoted their career and have
Mm-hmm.
been out for a little while and gotten okay with the dynamic of their licensed architect, but they do something else. Absolutely love it. And they are so happy they went through that struggle. And so I know you're
Mm-hmm.
going through the struggle on
Yeah.
adjusting and everything. Um, but knowing that all of them made it through to the other side, when they took a step towards a direction towards something they were passionate about and love
Mm-hmm.
more. Like I know I just released Jennifer Keegan. She's with GAF, and she's architecturally trained. She's not licensed, but she even said, I love my job. And for somebody
Mm-hmm.
to just say that sentence, I don't hear that within architecture that often in
Mm-hmm.
that statement.
Mm-hmm.
But I have other professionals. I had a facilities person here locally that works in healthcare, Steve, and he pivoted into the owner side. He
Mm-hmm.
always starts his introductions with, I'm an architect. And then he explains the rest of the stuff on what he actually does because he
Uh-huh.
had that, I'm an architect, I got my license, like, this is who I am, but this is what I'm doing as my job. And
Right.
so those are those are some people, but I know I've had other professionals. A friend of mine that I actually went to elementary school with and went to college with for architecture, she just left being on the construction side to do flower design for weddings. And
Oh,
it
hell
was it was
yeah.
that like
Yeah.
faster pace. It's not as fast as graphic design. You still have to think through it, and it's complicated. But
Mm-hmm.
now she's like, how do I make this more sustainable? Because it's actually very unsustainable with
Mm-hmm.
live flowers and what you need to hold structures together. It's very toxic. So she's like, how can I bring that sustainability lens I've learned in school and in the construction world? How can I bring it into weddings and flower design? And
Wow,
so
that is so cool.
I'm like, that's awesome. And it's just like that architecture education is what gave her that lens to
Mm-hmm.
open up her own business and start to try to figure out solutions and work through that process. But I feel like if she didn't have the architecture education, she wouldn't have like thought of
Yeah.
it maybe as much.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. No, that's so cool. And I love that she did that. I applaud her for doing that. And um what was I gonna say about oh, you can do a lot of things outside of architecture, as a career, but I think it's important to know too, within architecture, there's a need for all different types of skills and talents. And it's like, I think in school, we're taught that the designer is like the most valued in architecture. At least in my experience, it was. But it's like the profession needs those spec writers, they need the
Mm-hmm.
code, people who love code and thrive on that. My husband does, and I'm like, wow, like that
It's like, no, you can have that.
yeah, you can. And like, but that's what's so cool is like, I think that's the perception of architecture is like, oh, we just do design. But like, there's so much more to it. And there's so many opportunities for careers within architecture too. That's not just design. So I wanted to share that too, because you don't have to leave the profession to kind of find your niche and what you're
Mm-hmm.
passionate about. Not at all. You can in the profession too, and um, kind of decide what works best for you.
Yeah. Because I know I'm more tagged as a technical architect, which I am more
Mm-hmm.
technical, but the human side I care about as well. So I don't do as much design
Yes.
stuff, but that doesn't mean I don't want to be part of the conversation. It's like, sure, you can have a different design lead, that's perfectly fine, but I don't want to be just
Right.
detailing your designs. Like, I want to be part of the conversation to come through as a
Mm-hmm.
team, but I'm perfectly fine that you get the final say on it, but I get final say on how details are drawn and how we communicate our design to the contractor. So it's you gotta find your little niche and what works.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you say, you're interested in that people aspect, and I think that's such a huge role as an architect and in this profession. Um, I had this thought of this is kind of off topic, but I worked in retail for my first job, and it's like that taught me so much about just
Mm-hmm.
communication and like talking with people and like being able to sell things. And, it like what seemed like a job that you wouldn't relate to in the future so much. It really helped me build really life like fundamental skills. Um,
I definitely
and
agree with you
that's
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those were my first jobs, was on the retail side. Like I was in a um, reclaimed children's clothes store. I was at a Hallmark store. The amount of guys that would come in on Valentine's Day trying to figure out gifts for their wives or girlfriends. And I'm like, okay, tell me more about them so that I can help you find a present and get something. But even Kohl's, and just seeing like, okay, people are trying
Yeah.
to like get the best deals, see what fits, but all sorts of different families and dynamics are coming through. And you have to pivot on the spot based on who you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Is so
Mm-hmm.
important. And
Yes.
then there was a book I wanted to mention to you too. I was trying to see if I had it close by.
Oh,
I don't
cool.
remember the author. Since you're struggling, it's called The Portfolio Life, and it's by
Oh, okay.
Christina Wallace. And I know when I started Mentor Dino, I definitely struggled with kind of having two lives. Um, and it is super helpful in understanding how to diversify your career, a lot like how we diversify like a
Mm.
401k and everything like
Uh-huh.
that, because so many people define their life based on their job or their title. So when they lose their job title or step away from it, it can feel like a
Mm.
crisis because they've called
Mm-hmm.
that their identity for so long.
Yes.
Not saying you're in a crisis on identifying with architect versus graphic designer, but she is. It was a phenomenal book. I also listen to the audiobook, which she reads, so that is
Very
always a fun
cool.
little tool, and that it helped me understand why I enjoy Mentor Dino so much. So, but still
Yes.
doing things as a normal architect would so far.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you so much for recommending that. I love reading and I love researching. So yeah, I will definitely check
Yeah.
that one out.
But getting back on the design side and adjusting back to Phoenix, since you started your own business after you moved back to Phoenix after being gone for 10 years, did you find any struggles with redefining your professional network moving back to a city? Because I'm sure you have a fantastic network in Austin. And
Mm-hmm.
then leaving that network and trying to rebuild again for anybody else that's moved to a new city.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely challenging starting out. And I did have, or still do have, an amazing network in Austin. I was really involved with AIA and that local chapter, and um, I think it was definitely a transition for me to not have that quite so anymore. So I just started reconnecting with the network that I did have here in Phoenix through family, through friends, and I think some advice I would give is, yes, joining professional organizations is wonderful and like such a head start that helped me so much in my career, being involved in AIA in Austin and my professional development. But I think, getting out there and just meeting people, like meeting people at the gym, at our community gym, really like saved me when I first moved here. We moved out here in April, and by May we were signed up, and like those were our first kind of closer friends because we were seeing them every day, and that has spun into relationships now. And so I think just getting out there and meeting people. If you admire someone that you don't know on a personal level, reach out to them, reach out to have a coffee. And, most people are nice. Most people will be receptive, and like, you made a new friend. And I think there's so much power in, sharing knowledge in your profession or outside of your profession. And so I really love meeting new people and learning more about their stories and, what their view of the world, because that makes me a better designer. It makes me a better person. So that's a kind of long-winded way of saying, like, yeah, just get out there and meet people. Meet
Yeah.
people.
Don't be a hermit in your house all day. Go out and just see who's around. Because for you, shifting to graphic design, like you don't, the AIA is still important, but you're helping
Mm-hmm.
more people than just architects. Because you mentioned your one friend's more of a dancer, And so it's like,
Yes.
well, like the door is wide open for you to connect with all other different types of organizations.
Yeah, yeah. And I think previously, because I was working in architecture, I kind of siloed myself a little bit into that network and that world, which was great. You know, that worked for me at that time. But like you said, it's different now because my work can extend to all types of businesses and all types of people. So I've been more open to just events outside of architecture, and I've been going to more art events. So that's been really fun to explore too.
Have you found any particular organization to be helpful that's not an architecture organization?
Not right now. No, I think I've just been going to some client events of mine. An art curator I work for, she hosts these monthly events, and all types of people go, and it's really fun. And so I've been trying to make an effort to go to those type of events. I don't think I've had a specific organization yet. You know, I'm still learning
Testing the
and trying to
waters.
find that. Yeah, yeah, testing the waters.
Yeah, and it's always seeing like where people are, and then there's just so many different organizations. It's just like, okay, well, I can't do all of them, even if they were
Hmm.
all architecture based. It's like you can't spread yourself too thin, as we always
Yeah,
tend to do in the design side.
yeah, exactly. And the whole point I kind of started doing my own thing was to recover from burnout. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, you could totally get back on that train and find yourself in the same space. So yeah, I've been trying to really be more intentional with where I decide to put my time and my effort, um, and be a lot more careful than I have been in the past because, like I said, I want to do all the things. So, I got to pace myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
I 100% know that feeling. The amount of ideas and stuff I have for Mentor
Yeah.
Dino is endless, and some people say I'm crazy on some of them, so that must be it's a good idea. That's what I
Yeah.
just keep saying. I'm
They're
like,
nowhere
I
the
will get there
same.
eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're the same in that way for sure. Like my phone always has like constant notes that I'm taking of like, oh, I could do this and this, or let me try this.
Yeah.
You know,
Or the
my
amount of post-it notes that you cannot see on this video recording right now that's in front of
yeah.
me. My husband usually makes fun of me and just the amount of post-it notes I'm using because you never know when like an idea will come up. Like I'll even be
Yes.
drafting and I have an idea about something, so I just want to write it down real quick before I forget. But oftentimes in a post-it note, because I tend to have my like actual architecture work notebook, and I'm like, well, I don't want to put that in that notebook. I'll put on a
Yeah.
post-it note and then add it to my other notebook later, and then just have
Yeah.
post-it notes
Yeah.
everywhere.
Let's have this nice chaos going on. Yeah. No,
Exactly,
I
organized chaos, and it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally feel that. Like, I'm writing a book right now. It's still underway. It's called Pep Talk Tips, Advice, and Encouragement for Women in Architecture, or for women starting their careers in architecture. And it's so funny because, when you think about writing a book, it's like so romanticized. It's like you have a typewriter in the cabin, like, and these thoughts come to you. But like, no, it's mostly me at like 2 a.m. when I can't sleep. I'm typing in my phone, like all these thoughts of like, oh yes, I need to include this in the book, or, you know,
Yeah.
I think, I think that's common with the creative process, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
these things kind of hit you at different times, and
Yeah, I would say you
there's so,
need to step out to experience life to be able to have the ideas to create. Like, if you don't get out of architecture and go experience something, then your design kind of gets stipend or you hit more design mental blocks. But sometimes your
Mhm.
best ideas are when you're least expecting it and like at a bar with friends or
Yeah,
walking in a
yeah.
park. but
No,
but I know what you mean with
absolutely.
writing a book. I did that too with my like it was just a guide for high school students and parents going in to start studying architecture, and I feel like a lot of it was just like pretty straightforward since we've gone through it, but it still is a
Hmm.
long process, and it's like, well, how do I organize it? And there's a lot of things that kind of happen at the same time, So it's just like, but in a book, it's a little bit more linear on how you read it. So there's a lot of like reshuffling of chapters and where do I want to explain it first to make it make sense and then have other people read it that aren't architects at all, since that's who I was writing for. Because it's like, am I making any sense to you? And trying not to do any archy speak or jargon in it to confuse anybody. But it's a long process. So I give you a lot of credit. It'll be a very long time before I write another book. I like shorter content.
Yeah, I know. It's a whole other creative endeavor, right? But
it's like building a building. It's a longer process.
Yeah. It's a longer process for sure. There are a lot of complexities there. But it's been really fun to dive into that too.
Yeah. And how do you feel your own wellness has been shifting from being an employee to an entrepreneur?
Oh my God. I mean, it's drastic. It's drastic from like where I was a year ago. This past week in my book, I made a table where I have two columns side by side. And in one column, the topic is wait, how did I phrase it? My picture
You'll
of my day.
Change it 5 times by the time you actually.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what do I call it? Yeah, it's my day on the burnout train versus my day now, actively taking care of myself. And it's so funny because like literally just writing out what I did, like how I started my day, what I'm like physically doing, what I'm eating, what I'm like drinking. And it's just, the difference is kind of staggering. Like, on the burnout train, I would get up, rush to work, pump 2 cups of espresso into my body, not have breakfast, like already put my body in a state of stress, and then continue that stress like throughout the day. Not make my lunch, go get like a not so healthy option, not move my body after work, like study for 3 hours for the AREs. And then just like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, how was I surviving? Like, how was I doing this? And then now it's like, actually sleep, get some good sleep, have a good breakfast. I have matcha now instead of coffee. And like just these small changes in your day, I mean, have a huge impact on your health, physical health and mental health, especially.
Yeah, I always joke, like I didn't have like an actual like smartwatch whenever I was burned out. And I don't know if I would have wanted it because like it does alert me on the days I'm like really stressed. And even my really stressful days now are nowhere near what they were when I was on the burnout train. And so it's like, oh my gosh, if I had this on and it was alerting me every time my heart rate was up, like, and even my resting heart rate is really high because I'm already still moving 1,000 miles an hour. But
me too.
It's a different speed. And it's like, okay, I'm not like killing myself exhausted, but there are times that I do have to like stop. And it's like, nope. And my husband's great at yelling at me to like, nope, you're done. Close the laptop for the day. We're going for a walk. We're doing this to like keep me in check. And I know I need that. But like when you're on that burnout train, like it's hard to know you're on the train.
Yes.
I guess it's not like the like velocity, like, an object in motion will stay in motion. So you don't feel like you're moving 1,000 miles an hour on a train. But if you like stood outside the train for 2 seconds, you'd be like, holy shit. Like, where was that going?
What am I doing with my life? Yeah. No, I give props. I have a therapist who I absolutely love. And also I mentioned this podcast to her and she's like, oh, give me a shout out. So shout out Chelsea.
Yay, Chelsea. I'll make sure to put it in your short too. So then Chelsea will get 2 shout outs.
Yeah. She'll love that. But no, it's like this also another quote that her old yoga teacher said was, you're worthy of your own effort. And I love that because it sounds so simple, but like it's so hard, right? It's so hard to like take care of yourself in today's day and age, like drinking enough water, eating breakfast, like making nourishing choices for your body. Like, it's hard. And,
Yeah. You have to do all
um,
these things. Make sure you get it every day.
yeah, you have to do all these things. So, no, I think especially if you're struggling with mental health, seeking out a therapist is like totally, totally great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like life for everyone right now is really hard. And so if that helps your life experience make it a little bit more easier for you, like, why not? You know? Um, so yes, that's my shout
Yeah.
out for mental health.
Yeah. And if you can't get a hold of Chelsea as a therapist, even just talking to somebody outside your firm can be very helpful. Talking to
Yes.
somebody
Mm-hmm.
inside and outside of the AEC industry, which is why I always tell young professionals to build their network locally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to build their own net, whether it's, they want to get a new job or something doesn't feel right in the office culturally, or you're getting burned out, or you're saying you're burned out, nobody's listening to you. That happens too. So having those other people to talk to, whether they know what we do as architects, designers, and engineers or
Mm-hmm.
not, you're trying to find that people that are off the train to talk to you.
Right.
And
Right.
so doesn't matter if
That's
it's a therapist or not.
great.
If you are like depressed and it starts to be a clinical issue, please go see a therapist. I am not a therapist. Um,
Yeah.
but sometimes people just need a voice, or if they're in a high stress mode, just talking to somebody to understand their experiences can be a lifesaver for you. So
Yes.
it's very important.
For sure. Yeah, I think, forming those strong relationships and intimate relationships too, where you can bring up that kind of stuff and, talk about these things. There was a program that I was involved in at AA Austin. It was the Leadership Collective, and we we kind of called it architecture therapy because
Yep.
it was such a safe place, a safe space where we could bring just problems we were having at work or in our personal lives, and like anything from like I have to have this really difficult conversation with a client or with a builder. How what would you do to go about this? So I think it's really important to have your community of people that you trust that you can talk about those things with.
Yeah. I know I went through the Leadership Institute locally in Pittsburgh whenever I was going through burnout, and they did a session that's like problem solving, and you have to let a group problem solve for you, and you cannot give any
Oh
facial
yeah,
reaction, you can't do
we did that
anything.
too.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, it was the best thing ever. It works. You could do it hybrid, virtual, like anything. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I ever get stuck in a crazy dilemma, I want to bring together close professionals, but even people that didn't even know the inner workings of the struggle. Was like
Yes.
fascinating. The only thing I was allowed to do was write. And so I could write notes, and like the path they go down, you wouldn't even think to go down, but you can't give a response to guide them. So then you're
Yes.
not like making them go and select something for you that you're thinking. You just have to let them speak.
Right.
So,
That's so cool. We did that exact same exercise, but it was in person. And
mm-hmm.
I think I had to explain the situation in like a minute, turn around, and
Yep.
then three other people were having this meeting without me. I was just listening.
Uh huh.
And yeah, it's amazing when you get a different perspective and multiple perspectives of like how to go about something.
Yeah. Mine was in person as well at the time, but you could still do it remotely. Like you could turn around right now and then I can't see your face, or you could just turn off your
Yeah.
camera.
Yeah.
It's a whole other thing.
Right.
But like doing exercises like that just like help. But I've even had like a project architect group within a firm, and we'd get together and it was equally like architect therapy, because we were all in that type of level but on different
Um,
projects and having different issues, so we could just talk about, hey, I'm either struggling to help educate and teach this young professional, or I'm having this difficulty with the client, or hey, I've got this
mhm.
design dilemma that I need help with. And you had that at least level of expertise and camaraderie with it. That was so helpful. And so you didn't feel
Yeah.
alone.
No, those are just like invaluable, um, just in life too, right? Like, I think that's what really good friends and family are for too. Like, I have this issue and I need help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I like always wrapping up my podcast with this final question, and it's, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their career?
I think my number one piece of advice, I have a couple, but to be proactive of forming your network or your squad, just like we were talking about, forming the people that are going to support you, because doing anything good, you can't do it alone. And I can't say how many times in my life where, moments of success really attributed to people that helped me get there, and helped me along the way. So I think be proactive about forming your squad is really, really important. I think learn and absorb everything that you can. Like we just talked about, working in retail, like every experience you can develop life skills. And that was one example where that really stuck with me for a long time. And I built on that today. And I also think, lastly, it's okay to not figure everything out all at once. And you're not expected to. There's this kind of pressure on us in society to even picking your major, at such a young age. And there's so much pressure to choose your thing and stick with your thing until you die. And you don't need to. And you have so much time to figure life out. So take it one step at a time.
Yeah, because I'm sure you didn't think you would have your own graphic design company whenever you were coming out of school.
No, I would have never predicted that. So yeah, things and life change. And so I think learning to adapt to those changes and to be honest with yourself about what you want is really important.
Yeah, because it's okay to pivot or do something different. Or even if you stay in architecture and the firm you fell in love with, you don't align with anymore, it's fine to move on to a different firm. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. And, for those starting out in their, career journey and don't know what they want to do, just try different things. Just actively work towards something. And if that thing isn't right, move on to the next. So I think being proactive is the number one thing to do, I would say.
That's fantastic advice. Echo it completely.
Thanks.
Now, if anybody wants to get a hold of you or wants any help with their own graphic design or social media, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me would be Liz at SydnorDesign.com. So that's SYDNOR design.com. That's my email.
Okay. And I will also put your website link in the show notes below. So if anybody wants a quick access to the website or your Instagram account, I'll put your handle on there too, because I know I follow you on Instagram.
So. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, that would be great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Liz, for taking the time to speak with me today. It was fantastic to hear more about your story and what you're doing with your own business.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I had so much fun today. So thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.